Welcome to another episode of Distory. My name is Kirk from walruscarp.com, and this evening, Kate and I are going back to Disneyland to the newly redesigned Haunted Mansion queue, and there are a lot more details that we need to go over and kind of explore, come up with our own thoughts and opinions on why things exist. And Kate has uncovered some really fun stuff for tonight. So with me, as always, is Kate, the Disney Cicerone. Kate, how are we feeling this evening?
I am great. It's been a really fascinating week because I've been posting some of the things that we found on our previous episode. And so many people have chimed in with information and stuff to share and ideas of their own and thoughts of their own. And the thing that's really interesting for me is I'm really starting to see, as we've dug into the history of this queue, of the stories that we're finding in this queue, there's some overall themes of transformation from life to death that maybe people are just totally overlooking, but they're all there. And they definitely lean really hard into the Madame Leota theme, which, you know, we're repping Madame Leota in our wardrobe this episode. But there's also something at the end of the queue that doesn't make sense, didn't seem to make sense at all to me until you realize what it represents. And so I'm very excited to get there at the end of this episode because it's something.
Well, let's get into it, Kate. Jeez, how long are we going to talk about it?
Something that I think you and I can answer that a lot of people maybe can't. They're asking why it's not like the Walt Disney World queue, which is super interactive, right?
Yeah.
Like, what is this about? A lot of people are like, it's a lot of Home Depot things and whatnot.
The answer, kids, is money. The answer is money.
I don't think it's the only answer, though.
The only answer is money.
So Disneyland's version of the Haunted Mansion historically is not as obvious as a haunted house from the outside. Now, Disney World isn't super obvious either, but it's definitely different than Disneyland's. Walt wanted it not to look like a haunted house. He didn't want it to look like it was decay. He wanted it to be this beautiful, cleaned up, house from the outside. But Walt Disney World has signs of decay that you see before the stretching room. Like, you think about, you step in the lobby and you see cobwebs up above, and the aging man portrait is already happening. And it's like, there's already signs of decay going on before the stretching room. Whereas Disneyland, you don't see any of that until after the stretching room. So it makes sense that their queue would be hints of spooky things, but not any obvious signs of being haunted. It just gives you creepy vibes. And I think that was what they were going for, if I had to guess, for Imagineering.
Don't you think, though, they could have had creepy things that weren't like straight up spirits? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, for example, right, we get the organ. The organ, I don't think it necessarily fits in Disneyland, but the organ doesn't necessarily represent like this is 100% ghosts are in this house. Yes, it has skulls ornately on it, and it is very creepy, but it's a nice, beautiful organ.
Yeah, but you're definitely like, there's just like a totally different vibe in the Walt Disney World queue where it's definitely
well, I'm looking at one element. Like, don't look at the whole thing. Like, just look at the organ for the forest.
You're like, don't be comprehensive. Focus on this.
Yeah, no. Because if you look at everything else, then yeah, I would 1,000% agree with you. But that doesn't happen here. I mean, I guess the other thing too is, like the illusion of death is more represented in vague context in Disneyland than it is in Disney World. Because I mean, we straight up have lots and lots of gravestone, headstones.
We're like talking to spirits, like,
right? Like we even have a murder mystery. Like it's very in your face, and it's not like that in Disneyland.
Well, I think that's true of a lot of things in Walt Disney World. Tend to be a little bit more obvious and in your face, whereas Disneyland tends to be more subtle. I think that is definitely how they tend to do their sort of humor and their staging of a lot of things in Disneyland. The Imagineering team tends to go more subtle in Disneyland and more kind of like, in your face, I guess, in Disney World, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I would I'll end here, but I would agree, because when you go on the aerial ride in DCA, you're just in a boring blank building. So very subtle. I agree. And we built a giant oceanic fortress. So yeah, I would agree. It's definitely. But I'll stop talking about it, because that's
I was more thinking about the chimp that's in the Jungle Cruise and how in Disneyland he's like, he's looking at the butterfly via a microscope and studying it. And in Disney World, he's just stuffing it in his mouth.
Let's just go. I went with a really boring office building that just happens to have a really great ride in it. And Kate went with a chimp.
Well, Jim in our chat saying Hatbox Ghost is in the attic in Disney World or Disneyland. And he is totally in the wrong place in Disney World.
Yeah, I mean, you're right. You're right. I'm just happy we have them. That's it. That's all I am.
You guys needed the man in the web. Just saying.
Dude, man in the web. Stop. Let's go. Can we talk about, can we stay focused here?
Let's hop back into this queue. So where we left off last time was at the safe. We were talking about, because everybody's like, what in the world is a safe? We're not going to recap that here, but it had to do with Captain Gore and his bride Priscilla. And we were talking about the gazebo that is there as well. So that's where we kind of stopped in the queue this last time. Now we're going to continue on. Some of these things are, I can't remember exactly where they were. I've only been through this queue twice, but we'll talk about them. And then we're going to move around some significant areas one by one as we get through the rest of this queue. So one thing that I found, Kirk, is these two faces that are up on the wall that are like gargoyles or demon faces. And one side is right side up and the other one is upside down.
Yeah.
So I found that displaying a gargoyle upside down is a symbol of reversal of fortune, misfortune, or deliberate act of defiance against the protective powers traditionally associated with gargoyles. As they're typically seen as guardians against evil, placing them upside down could represent a vulnerability or exposure to negative forces. So it's kind of like, it's more foreshadowing, I think, for what's to come. And we do have something that's kind of similar to this that does exist in the mansion. There is a face that is mounted on the wall in a picture frame in the corridor of doors. So to me, it definitely seems like foreshadowing of what's to come. Do you have anything you want to add in for that?
I mean, I feel like there's definitely a duality that comes into play here because obviously not everything is 100% evil or 100% good. The faces are Gothic or almost like Renaissance. The Green Man, also known as the folate head, is a motif in architecture and art and a face made of completely surrounded by foliage and spreading out its facade. Central to its design is its connotation for natural whispering. But here we go. Look at this thing. Like, tell me that's not like kind of the vibes of those other things. So yeah, but this whole concept of like a green man, like you notice there's flowers and stuff behind him as well. So I don't know if this is like got some ties to paganism, but I'm assuming that's kind of like some of the vibe.
Yeah. Yeah. There's definitely a lot of ties back into nature and things that they allude to different things within this queue. To me, it's also like this particular face that I'm showing is this one that is on the gate and it has kind of blue stained glass behind it. Part of it is just kind of this idea of faces which occur in the corridor of doors. We see portraits of, faces which are actually the pop-up ghosts from the graveyard.
All right, hang on. I have to correct myself and keep that picture up.
Okay.
So Green Man appears in three different ways. A foliate head is completely covered in green leaves, so like green leaves around their head. Then the disgorging head spews vegetation from his mouth.
Oh.
And then the bloodsucker head sprouts vegetation from all facial orifices, including tear ducts, nostrils, mouth, and ears.
Gross. No, thank you.
Yeah, but he's also a symbol of rebirth and a representation of cycle of new growth that happens every spring. But also, I think the reverse of that would be if he's flipped over, it would be death. So like death. You like that?
Oh, I love
the green man. It's not just Charlie in Always Sunny dressed up in a green suit running around.
No, see, and that's what I think that's a major theme that I think so many people are missing from this is this idea of this transformation between life and death is what this queue represents in so many ways. And so that is so fascinating that you have that.
Yeah,
that
somebody
me.
somebody was asking in our chat about specifically, is it Celtic? But it actually has origins in lots of different areas and mosaics. So this green man doesn't just appear mostly in Christianity. You're seeing it all over the place. So you're seeing it in areas in Iraq. You're finding it in old Byzantine mosaics in Istanbul. You're seeing it in Germany. So this concept of this face with leaves around coming out, or bloodsucker, it's pretty interesting. And it reminds me so much of, I don't know if you ever, when I was a kid, I loved Labyrinth, and Labyrinth uses a great version of I guess it would be a foliate door knocker that Sarah has to like jam a thing in his mouth so she can like knock on the door. But it's funny because there's also, in that, the faces from Labyrinth it's like one person tells the truth, the other one tells nothing but lies. So like you think about that duality too. And I'm telling you, these characters look identical.
Well, we'll see a couple more of these faces kind of come up throughout the queue. So just kind of keep that in mind if we see any more of these.
Keep it in mind.
But I'm going to move on just for sake of time to this bizarre cat with the moon face.
That's how my cats look every night when I'm doing this podcast.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to ask, did you find things about this?
So I found stuff about cats.
Okay.
In general, but I didn't find specifically about that style. I'm tying it into cats specifically associated with witches, bad luck, and mainly in Western folklore, and symbolisms of mystery, independence, and connection to the spiritual realm. And then the moon also has, because it changes and its phases, illustrates the passage of time, whimsy, and slight romance. So I think, again, more pagan, because that's where witches came from, is all this like pagan deity stuff. So
to me, it's interesting because we saw a cat already in the queue. We saw what represented the one-eyed cat that was earlier in the queue. And remember, he's just to refresh your memory, he's sitting on this little pedestal. And we already went through all the history of the one-eyed cat, so I don't want to rehash that. But now we're seeing another cat, which I think is still supposed to represent the one-eyed cat. But instead of crouching down now, he's kind of like alert and sitting up. And so there's like a transformation to his pose of what he was before and what he is now, right? And also seeing the moon being kind of phases of transformation. So that's really interesting. The one-eyed cat is going to go through his own transformation as well. So I think that there is a connection with the cats we see in this queue and the transformation that happens to them as we go through the queue.
I love cats. I love every kind of
cat. I finally watched that.
And I want to hug all of the cats, but can't hug every cat. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you. The cats change.
Yeah.
Although, all right, hang on. I have to say it, Kate. I have to say it. We are reaching here, bro. Like, you realize that. Like, everyone who's saying this feels off the shelf, you're not wrong. Here we are trying to make sense of it, and it does make sense in a larger context. But it almost feels like your weird, eccentric ants, like random statues that they have around their house or outside, and you're like, none of this really makes sense in like an overall theme, but it's generally just weird.
Yeah. Well, I mean, behind the cat, there's a dragon on a speaker. But the only thing I can go for is he must be like a gargoyle, I guess, is what he's representing.
I think he's more representative of a gargoyle because we have seen gargoyles that are represented by dragons as well. So
I think that we should move on to one of the major areas, and one of the things that people have asked me about a lot besides the safe is what is going on around the tree. Now, the tree has like a ton of things happening around it. It's interesting. When I first kind of was talking about this with Elliot, he's like, well, obviously it's a transformation theme that's going on here. And I was like, whoa, let's break it down. So we see sitting around the tree, there's a lot of different sculptures. There is an owl that is next to the tree. But then there is, which we've talked about owls previously and their connection to witches. That's why you see them show up in Harry Potter and whatnot. But you see this little statue of Pan, the faun, who's playing a pan flute. Now, in Greek mythology, Pan symbolizes the wild fertility and the season of spring. He's a he's a horned man with the legs with the legs of a goat, similar to a faun or a satyr. He was the god of shepherds and flocks and was concerned with their fertility and well-being. So the interesting thing that I learned about Pan, though, from this was Pan was said to be able to induce panic in humans and beasts, turning them into deranged carnivorous beings. So the wildness of soldiers in battle, named Panic, was attributed to Pan. That's where we get the word panic from, is from Pan.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. He was also the god of rustic music and impromptus. He was often portrayed as a piper, and in painting, sculpture, and ancient representations, he often shown playing his pan pipe. You can get this same particular statue at the museum company. I think it's on sale for $90 right now. So if you want to go get your own,
it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous, dude.
But he's surrounded by a whole bunch of things here, which I think it took me a while to figure out what these are. Maybe you have your own theories, Kirk, but creepies and crawlies, toads in a pond, serpents and spiders, foreshadowing. I think it's all Madame Leota tied into.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's where I, except for, I don't remember her going, grab some frankincense and some wondrous myrtle, and do I hear a rapping on a shell of a turtle? I don't remember the turtle sound.
Maybe he's a little creepy or crawly.
Oh, he's a crawly.
Yeah.
I kind of lean the, well, no, she says spiders directly. He's not creepy though. He's a crawly. He's a cutie. He's a cutie crawly.
He's a cutie.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk about what else is here?
Is there a rat there? I mean, there's the frog statues, the turtle.
I don't think so. There's a snail, a butterfly, a turtle, 3 frogs or maybe toads, and a spider, like a tarantula.
Yeah.
So
weird.
And we do get the serpent does come next. But
what the heck is that thing?
So the 3 frogs.
That's the butterfly.
I did find a sculpture by Frederick Warren Allen, who was a famous sculptor, made it.
Oh yeah, dude! You guys don't follow his work?
He made a pan bird bath circa 1960 that has 3 frogs around it. And that's the closest I've got to why in the world, beyond Madame Leota, that these frogs are paying attention to Pan. But there is, for the toad, remember that there was some lost Madame Leota incantations that we talked about previously in our Haunted Mansion series. And the one that says, horned toads and lizards fiddle and strum. Please answer the roll by beating a drum, which is why we have drums in the seance circle. They just deleted that narration, so we never ended up actually getting it in the mansion. But that did exist. And so I wonder, maybe that's part of it too. But they have toads in a pond. I mean, that's already in there. So I think it's just foreshadowing, quite honestly.
Look, you got a little Naveen there too.
I know, like, what is that?
Well, it's because Tiana's so close by, you know? You got to have a frog prince.
That's the only thing I could figure. I was like, really? Like, we're going to, like, refer to Princess and the Frog?
This is clearly just junk. This is junk.
But if you think of it tied back into Leota's incantations, at least there's something. There's something there.
Where's tail of a rat? If there was a rat there, Kate.
Yes, they need to add in a rat. I agree.
I'm going to throw a rat in there. I'm going to buy. Listen, I'll find where they bought these little frogs. I'll spend the $40 and I'll throw a cement rat in there. Nobody will notice. And I'll go, there you go. Tail of a rat. You're good.
Yeah, there you go. There is a tarantula, though, and the spiders did used to be in the Haunted Mansion. There was a spider web that used to be in the load area, specifically in Disneyland. And there was actual spiders in the Walt Disney World version. So spiders did appear.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
In Walt Disney World, it was amazing.
And now they're gone.
And we had a man, and he was a spidery man. He looked ridiculous, dude. He was like, I wonder what they're going to do with him after they pull him off of Tom Sawyer Island. Fun fact, he's been relocated over there.
Yeah, he is. He's snoring away for all eternity. If we go around the tree a little bit more, there is also a serpent, which I think just honestly comes right from that Madame Leota.
What is this thing too? I was trying to figure out this like. Is that
Well, the
another
eye is
thing?
symbolism. It's hiding electrical cords, I think.
Oh, great.
Yeah, because
Very
if you look
nice.
up further, but I think they painted something that has an eye on it, so I think it's supposed to be symbolic with the eye. And then there is also up in the tree. There's like these light up orbs that are in the
Oh,
tree.
what's another word for orbs, Kate?
I'm not saying it. You can say it.
Balls.
Yeah, they have butterflies shapes on them, which also lends into that transformation theme.
Like a metamorphosis.
Yeah, so they also have this hanging in the tree, which is this like string of bells. So I looked this up, and of course, we have the saying from Leota that says, "Wizards and witches, wherever you dwell, give us a hint by ringing a bell." So I think that's why we have bells here. But bells and strings with beads symbolize a connection to the spiritual realm, protection from negative energy, and the sound of positive change or good fortune.
Bro, if they would have given us 10 grand, I think you and I could have built something better in less time.
Oh yeah, well, 100%.
This is crazy.
I do want to say that bells represent the voice of the divine or call to attention. They also signify prayers, intentions, or the passage of time when counted during meditation or ritual practices. So the combination can also signify beauty, joy, and the flow of energy. But I think it really is that connection back to Madame Leota and ringing a bell and the seance circle and all those things. Basically, this tree is one giant Madame Leota tree. We've got like orbs floating in the tree. We have the eyes on the that go down the tree. We have the creepies and crawlies. We've got the ringing a bell. It's just Madame Leota's tree. That's what it is.
No. You got a green man, though.
Oh yeah, I you can barely see him. Like I kind of like had to lean away. I had to lean over a fence to get that picture.
Yeah.
Yeah, there is a green man in the tree. Yeah, they keep showing up again and again. So I love that you came up with that they're part of transformation as well. Moving along, there is this thing that's up on the wall that is this. Did you find anything about this design that's on the wall?
I did not.
I asked Elliot if it was Celtic, because he plays Irish music and he's seen a lot of Celtic things in his day and studied Celtic art, and he says no, it's too disorganized to be Celtic, so it's not a Celtic knot symbol. Really think it's just lawn art, garden art is what. But I mean, it could symbolize something, but I can't figure out what it's trying to symbolize. Below it is an orange gazing ball, which I'm gonna not show because Kirk's gonna make fun of me again. And then there's this thing, which a lot of people have been asking about this one, which is this sundial.
Oh, yeah, dude.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about this first?
Face down, wings up. Let's do it. First of all, it's a gargoyle, and he's on his I can't even talk now. He's on a sundial. Classical time. If our concept is transformation or passage of time, obviously having something that can tell time is a big part of that. So this would be symbolizing the passage of time. What I think is unique about our gargoyle is that he's got wings, which is not all gargoyles have wings. So that's kind of interesting because it kind of makes him more bat-like and nocturnal or supernatural. It also means that if he wants to take flight, he could. However, he elects not to. They also see positioned in his left hand a goblet that is strewn about, not sitting upright, but rather...
That's an hourglass.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought it was a goblet.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
no,
an hourglass?
I think it's an hourglass. Maybe I'm wrong.
No.
Hourglass.
I think you're right. I couldn't see at all. My JPEG wasn't as nice as yours.
I think it's an hourglass symbolizing.
I thought he was
time
drunk,
running out.
to be honest with you. I thought he was like...
He looks a little drunk.
I thought he was hammered. I thought he was like, I don't have time for this.
I think it's supposed to symbolize death and dying and time running out. So it's foreshadowing for what's to come in the mansion.
He looks so snuggly about it, though, you know?
Maybe a little sleepy.
That's what, you know,
True.
he seems down for it.
But I mean, maybe he's also really emaciated. So maybe he's just, it's also symbolizes kind of reaching the end of your life and time running out.
Maybe he has one of those really cool, like, giant glasses that were in those, like, wooden holders that they had in Germany, and he was cranking those suckers back, and that's why he's got a big little smile. Like, he's subtly knows it's all good.
I definitely think it's foreshadowing, and it's because we're moving through the queue and we're getting closer to the mansion. It's our time is running out as well. And I think gargoyles are supposed to be protectors, right? But if this guy's kind of like passed out, does that mean no one is protecting us and our time is running out? I think it's like some symbolism there.
Message.
Personally. Message.
That's from a very old movie.
Okay.
Yeah.
Something that I think we might have skipped over. So before we head into the greenhouse, there is another face that's on the wall that looks like this. And it is like a woman's face with some like snakes and like wings in her hair. But it's supposed to be Medusa.
There's how?
It's Medusa. It's Medusa. It's actually sold like Medusa on several websites, including
it makes
exoticbrands.net. You can get it for $110.
Okay. Well, listen here, exoticbrands.net. Her hair is mainly hair and feathers with like just 2 serpent heads. Like Medusa's hair was serpents. She didn't have hair. She definitely didn't have feathers.
I know, but it is sold everywhere in multiple places as Medusa. It's supposed to represent Medusa. And the reason we have Medusa, of course, is Mark Davis's changing portrait of Medusa.
Yeah.
So
I do love her.
They are foreshadowing what you're going to see there. Okay, let's move on into the greenhouse or the garden room with the glass ceiling structure. I parked here for a little while because this to me was really, really interesting. There really is a parallel to this area to the conservatory, which is inside the mansion. So this is what it looks like. It's essentially a glass roof that has a whole bunch of plants hanging from it and also these lamps, which we'll get to in a minute. But the conservatory, if you don't know what that is the section of the Haunted Mansion that has the coffin with the guy in it that's Exitenzio's voice. So you say, let me out of here, and he's like trying to get out. So this is all foreshadowing of the conservatory. So this is like the outdoor portion of the conservatory, if you will. Interestingly enough, there's live plants in here, okay? There's live plants here in the conservatory outside, or the garden room, the greenhouse outside. And inside the mansion, they are not alive anymore. They have all passed on. They are all dead and decaying. So we have this parallel, this transformation between the live plants and dead ones that we're going to see later. Now, however, the plants have not always been dead in the conservatory. So I went down a little bit of a rabbit hole here of conservatory talk, so just bear with me for a second. So I found some really interesting original concept art of the conservatory. And I don't think we've ever talked about this. Kirk, that this is some concept art by Colin Campbell, where you can actually see it.
Yeah.
It's in the portrait gallery, though. So the conservatory, you would have walked by it in the portrait gallery before you got on the ride. So it's like everybody's kind of attending the wake and walking by it next to the portrait gallery. Obviously, that moved into a different part of the attraction, but super interesting that it was there. And if you see it in a lot of the original pictures from this one's great. This one's from 1969. You can see that the flowers still look pretty much alive here. But there's something else here that you might notice, Kirk.
Is it the fog?
Yeah.
Wait, why did they have a smoke machine? I like it.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Everything that I've researched says a lot of people assume this was a publicity photo, and so they added fog for the effect. Other people say they did have it in the attraction, but they took it away pretty quickly because they realized that staging-wise, you go by it so fast that you're not going to be able to like see enough of the scene if it's obscured with like smoke or fog.
Well, it would be hard to contain the fog because you'd want it to dissipate and kind of like roll out. And the biggest part with fog is temperature. So the colder the fog is, the more it'll lay low.
Well, thank you for your fog knowledge. Appreciate that.
You know, most people call me Foghorn Leghorn. You know, I earned that.
I'm still kind of on this idea of flowers in general of them. So if we see Mark Davis had a changing portrait they didn't end up using in the mansion that is flowers that actually do decay. So they never ended up using that. But they did put it in the model of the Haunted Mansion. You can see it behind this little kind of paper cutout person you see in the portrait gallery. You can see the decaying flowers up there as well. So what happened with the flowers? Because they used to look like this. Even up to 2006, they were still kind of like fresh flowers. You can see over here, they look like the orchids are still pretty much intact and the plants are still growing in the conservatory. But by 2011, the flowers have completely changed and now everything is dead and decaying and falling apart, which I think is probably them. They made a switch because they wanted not only like spookier vibes, it's creepier if the flowers are dead, but also as a throwback to that Mark Davis changing portrait of the flowers dying. But in any case, where it ties back to what we're going to see in the queue is all of these plants are very much alive in the queue, which again is that transformation from live to dead that we're going to see.
Are those all alive?
Mm-hmm.
I would be honest, they all look dead in these photos.
They're living. They're definitely living, and they're green. Well, most of them are green. So, did you look up any of these plants?
No, I didn't. I honestly, I was just looking from the 3 photos. I didn't look at the videos, so I would love to learn more about what these plants are. Please.
Yeah, I don't have all of them. I have a couple of our friends, our Distory friends that helped me look up on our Discord some of the plants because I'm not a plant expert. But some of them are asparagus ferns, which actually symbolize new life and new beginnings. We have trailing jade, and then like the reddish purple one that we see in here is blood leaf. We think it's blood leaf at least, which looks like this. And you actually see this come up in other parts of the queue as well. So they do use this in the landscaping of the mansion, which I love the symbolism of using blood leaf for the Haunted Mansion. That just makes me happy. So shout out to Christina and Mugi from our Distorians Lounge on our Discord for helping me look those up.
These are some asparagus ferns.
Mm-hmm. And those definitely look familiar if you're looking up at the plants. But there's a couple others I haven't identified yet. So I'll have to do a little bit more searching.
Broad-based plant. It's got like a big leaf.
Yeah, we thought maybe some of it looked like orchid leaves, which would make sense if we're talking about the conservatory. Because if you remember that photo that I just showed you not too far ago, there was orchids in the Haunted Mansion at one point in that particular scene. So if they're orchid leaves, it would be a throwback to what at least used to be or maybe still is. I'm not sure if they have any dying orchids in that room. I haven't quite gone that in depth about the dead plants in the conservatory. Next time, kids. But anyway, that's kind of what I've seen in terms of plants there. The lamps actually are really, really fascinating to me. So they have these brass lamps that are hanging up here. And the most fascinating part about it is if you kind of like zoom in on them, that they have on each side, they have an on and an off switch that are like pull tabs, which are fascinating to me because it's like on is life and off is death, right? So again, that transformation from on to off, also reminiscent of Leota, was kind of a floating globe, very much reminiscent of Leota. But I looked it up as like a Felton gas-style electric pendant lamp is what it's called. But the pull tabs are really fascinating as I think it's storytelling for this whole transformation from life to death.
Yeah, I like where your head's at with this because honestly, you could have put anything up there, and why would you? I would think that these would be more expensive with that feature versus at the fixture. Do you know what I mean?
And it seems really unique. Like there's not a whole lot of these out there, so they specifically chose these with the on-off switch. So moving on, we have a bust that's in the garden. So this is what this guy looks like. He's a bust in the garden. We've seen busts all the way through the Haunted Mansion's history. Some of them were even going to be like the ghost host in the lobby way back in the day. We see the singing ones in the graveyard. Busts are not uncommon, but this specific one is modeled after Michelangelo's David. So that's where he comes from in terms of
it's a nice bust.
Who was constructed between 1501 and 1504. And this actually came from somewhere else too because it was repurposed from the FastPass distribution queue. So it is a repurposed prop.
I I got to actually see that statue. It's massive because you would normally think that, like, based in pictures, it looks like you would think that it would be like anatomically correct. This thing is gigantic, and it's cool because it symbolizes David being able to topple Goliath. He's holding a sling and a rock. It's cool. It's really cool. I was like, that is actually pretty impressive. That and the Sistine Chapel were probably in Italy the most like, okay, this lived up to the hype kind of vibe.
Yeah. My biggest memory of the Sistine Chapel was people like yelling "no photo" across the room constantly, nonstop.
I took a photo without flash.
Let's move on. There's another face that's in the wall here as we kind of creep along in this queue, and he has his eyes closed this time.
Green man.
We're definitely starting to see, I didn't even notice this till now because we had faces that had their eyes open, and then suddenly we have this gargoyle who's sleeping, and we have this guy whose eyes are closed. So even like the faces are starting to have a transformation as we go through the queue, which is interesting.
Kids, if you're playing the Distory drinking game, please make sure you drink when Kate says transformation. Be hammered by this point.
I'm sorry, but it's here, it's everywhere. So next, but there's some.
Wait, what's everywhere? Sorry, I missed that.
I'm not gonna.
What? Seriously? No, what was it?
Transformation.
Drink.
Okay, so if you see some plants that are around, I didn't go through all the plants in the queue, but these ones I did look up. There's ferns, which symbolize new life and beginnings. The purple flower that's on the creeping vine behind here is called a snail vine, which I looked up. It's actually a really pretty flower. And this symbolizes growth and perseverance. And apparently its scent intensifies as evening falls. So as darkness falls, this gets a little bit more intense as a plant. You smell it more. And then my favorite part of this is these leaves right here, because these are acanthus leaves. If you remember us talking about the stools that are over in the gazebo, they have acanthus leaves on the bottom. Well, they planted the actual plant in the queue, and they are they represent immortality and resurrection, is what acanthus do. So it's a vegetal motif associated with the idea of rebirth. It's been used as early as 500 BCE in Grecian art. So they have actual acanthus leaves in the queue, which is so fun.
Can you put those back up real quick?
Yes.
It was weird. I actually saw those in the Jungle Cruise because you know how they have like all this like natural foliage and whatnot, and those were actually hippocampus.
Okay. Anyway, I just thought those plants were really neat because I'm not going to say the word now because you've made me all nervous about it.
Nervous about what? Everyone wants to have a good time, Kate. Let the good times roll.
Some other things we see as we move along here, there is a gate with iron, and there's blue stained glass and 5 green circles around the top. I don't know if you have any ideas about the circles in particular, but the blue to me looks like an ocean, which ties back into the Captain Gore storyline.
That's what I had. It's pretty.
It is pretty. There is also another statue of Pan that is here. Did you have anything else about Pan? I'm sorry I kind of stole your thunder when it came to the Pan statue.
Nah, dude, you're good. You didn't hurt my feelings.
But Pan is also recycled from the Fast Pass distribution queue. This is what he used to look like over there. And then moving on, we have the Griffin, which is sitting down here, who has these wings, who's like a half lion, half eagle. So this Griffin was also repurposed from the old Fast Pass distribution queue. He's been a little bit tied up, and he lost his pedestal that he was sitting on. But something that's interesting about this Griffin, here you can see that this is what he looked like inside the queue back in the day. But something that's interesting about this particular Griffin is that he's very much reminiscent to the ones that are at the bottom of the staircase and load area. As you get into your doom buggy and you start going up the ramp there, which is like the staircase, it looks so much like that one. You can see him here, what he looks like. I don't know if we've talked about this before. I don't remember if we covered this in our Distory series about the Haunted Mansion. But there's actually a line on his neck from where they were going to turn and look at you. There's going to be one on either side, and they're going to turn. I think there is one on either side, but
We
they,
did.
yeah,
Yeah, we talked about this. I
you
love
can
it.
see the line where he was going to turn to look at you, and he was done by Cuban sculptor. I'm gonna butcher this. Ready? Ciro Rolando Santana Yarit, I think is how you pronounce it. But it's a Cuban sculptor who made all kinds of griffin sculptures in the mansion. You can see here the original blueprints for where they're located there at the bottom of the stairs. Those like green circles is where they were from. And he did a whole bunch of other griffins that are in the mansion as well. Like if you see in the ballroom, you can see here in the grand hall, the I guess it's like the legs of the chair and the arms of the chair are these also kind of bird-like griffins. He did those. He did the ones that are on the top of the chairs in the grand hall as well. There are some sculptures there. And I think my favorite though is he did the ones that are, you can see at the top of the conservatory, and you can also see them at the top of right before you exit the grand hall. You can see there's kind of these like faces of griffins that are up above on the top of the like poles that are in there. He did those as well. But anyway, here's what he looks like. And you can see right behind him is that griffin that is behind him in this this particular news article with him, a picture of him carving the chairs. The other thing you might notice as we come around the corner here is this particular fountain. Those of you who know Disneyland well know and love this fountain. It's been sitting in New Orleans Square for quite some time. But they moved it from the square into this queue area. And I actually have this super old, watch this. This is me and Elliot from our first time at Disneyland back in
my God.
2005, I think. But you can see the fountain is behind us. So
Kate had never seen sunlight back then.
That was transformation.
You lived in the You lived in the mansion back then.
Pretty much. I've always had very pale skin. So, but anyway, they just moved that fountain, so they didn't lose the fountain entirely, which actually is that was very touching for me to see that the fountain is still there, because I was super bummed that we were losing that fountain with this expanded queue. So I'm glad that they just relocated it and didn't completely get rid of it. Although it doesn't really have I don't think it has water in it. It's just kind of sitting there now, but it is what it is. Before we move on to kind of our last portion of this episode, I think we should pause for just a second and do our favorite thing, which is talk about some of the stuff we're working on as we wrap up 2024. Kirk, what do you got going on over there at Walrus Carp?
Well, over at Walrus Carp, we sell amazing clothing. So if you ever think about getting some theme park clothes that don't stink, maybe head over there. If you're a big fan of the Haunted Mansion or other spooky garments, we got you covered. Walruscarp.com. I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. Dude, I'm literally holding the mic like a weirdo. I'm just trying to make it different. Stand out a little bit.
So for me, I'm just wrapping up the year with celebrating all the books that I published this year. I did publish 2 books. One of them was What the Mansion I See, which is based in Walt Disney World, that talks about definitely has Haunted Mansion theme to it. It stars 2 Disney history live streamers. It's a romantic suspense that's set in Walt Disney World. And then I have Who the Mirror Reflects. Wait. And then I have Who the Mirror Reflects, which is also set in Walt Disney World, partially in Disneyland Paris, but stars some cast members and is a little bit of a different tale there. So it's part of the trilogy. That's the Pixie Dust and the Parks one. They're available on Amazon if you'd like to get them, or you can find all the information at disneycicerone.com about those.
I'm a sucker for What the Mansion I See.
It's a good one. And
it's a good one.
I do have the audio book is available for all of them except for the last one, which hopefully will be available in January. I'm working on wrapping that up. Getting sick does not really lend itself to being able to record an audiobook.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought they were at Tesla.
It's terrible. I was so nasal for so long. I was like, okay, I can't record anything like this.
Yeah.
Back to the mansion. Let's head on into this area that has the trellis roof, which was the old extended queue area. It was the original area where they had planned for you to exit from the Haunted Mansion on the southern side, because the Haunted Mansion was going to have 2 identical sides when it was going to be a walkthrough attraction. And this would have been the garden that you would have exited into. as you came out the southern part of the mansion. But then they changed it to a queue a while ago, and now they've kept that and they've just expanded things. So Kirk, do you want to talk about what's over here just a little bit?
Yeah, it's an exposed trellis system, and then you have a couple of hand lanterns that have been like held up above by chain, and then you have these were there before, right? Like the tomb mausoleum stuff, like that was there before, or has just been upgraded?
It's changed significantly.
Okay, it's changed significantly. I mean, I noticed a lot of the things that are adorned around it and on it. I felt that those were different and new, but I'm excited to hear because you have a lot more purview on this.
Yeah. So they completely redesigned this area in terms of it used to be the door for the southern exit, right, was down there, and they kind of redirected that. They put it on the side. And they added an elevator and an ADA exit, because before, in this particular haunted mansion, if you wanted to get down to the ride, you would have to go down the stretching room and then you'd have to come back up it. So you would have to see the stretching room in reverse, essentially, to leave, which is kind of a nightmare for cast members. So they've added its own elevator now. And one of our good friends from Distory here actually sent us a video on Discord of what it looks like down in that hallway, which I hadn't. Kirk, you're going to totally love this. So
I'm ready.
So they have an entire hallway that they've added some concept art to. There's a clock there, but there is some concept art in this hallway that is from Mark Davis's old concepts, including
got a pirate.
The burning miser is down there.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
so dope.
Yeah. And then they have the couple where she's like stabbing him in the heart.
Mm-hmm.
And they've got Medusa, but looking normal. And the couple where she like strangles
him.
Yep. And then they have the bell pools are down here, which I can't see. I have not studied these enough, but I think that they're similar to Disney Worlds in the servants' quarters, where they have the bell pools as well that are associated with each room. So
Kate, when am I gonna pull a misery and hobble you so that we can go check that out?
Yeah, just rent a wheelchair, call it a day. No, I'm just kidding. I would never do that. But yeah, I don't know.
I'll do it all natural.
Just
Sure, see that? Listen, it's the perfect thing. It actually makes perfect sense. Did you ever see the movie Misery?
No.
Okay, well, it's about a very famous author who the woman who kidnaps this famous author doesn't like the way that he ended the last part of the series, so she wants him to rewrite it, and so she kidnaps him, and to make sure he doesn't escape, she hobbles him.
So you're going to do that? Did you not like how I wrote one of my books?
Let's see if you can walk.
Oh my gosh. So anyway, that's why they had to redesign this, was because to make the ADA access, which makes so much sense.
I feel like almost that's like the major reason why they even did this refurb.
Yeah, I think it's partially that, and it's partially, if you're a Disneyland regular, you know how bad that queue got, because especially during Haunted Mansion Holiday, they would have to put ropes upon ropes upon ropes upon ropes around that fountain area. It was like a nightmare to have to go in that line. And so now it makes more sense, and it's a lot less anxiety producing than just like these ropes that you're going in forever. Yeah. So it made sense. They really needed an extended queue, and I'm glad that they have it now. But let's talk about the oven crypts a little bit. Do you want to go over some of the puns that are on this?
They're so funny, dude. At first I thought like some of them were serious. None of them are serious.
Yeah.
I'll be back. Rust in peace. El truly departed.
Trudy departed.
I truly departed. Empty tombs. Dustin to dust. Levitation. Gee, I miss you. Ray incarnation. You are gone. I am mortal, and pearly gates. Yeah, they're great.
We've talked about this before, so I'm not going to go into depth too much about this, but it's been a long time since we mentioned it about what these actually are, which are oven crypts. So remember that in New Orleans, they have a really high water table, so it necessitated people being buried above ground. So if you didn't have a lot of money, you were essentially placed in a plain casket of easily degradable wood. And then the casket was placed in a tomb like this, which is an oven crypt, for a year and a day. Then the temperature inside the tomb would reach an extremely high heat, comparable to the heat level of a modern oven, which is why it's called an oven crypt. And the heat and insects of New Orleans hasten decomposition. And so only bits of bone, casket wood, and metal pieces affixed to the casket remain when the tomb is opened again after a year and a day. And then in the early days of New Orleans, the pieces of the casket were actually removed and burned, while the remains were pushed to the back of the tomb, falling into an underground chamber called a caveau. This is where the phrase, "I wouldn't touch him with a 10-foot pole" comes from, because the pole being the device to push the remains to the back of the tomb. But that's what this is these are these oven crypts that are very common in New Orleans area. I have something.
Could you imagine in the summer?
I think that's why I keep them sealed up pretty much for the whole year. We're not gonna, yeah. I have some notes about the things that are on here, but I want to hear what you have too, because I've been talking a lot this episode. So what do you see here?
I see this. Is he? I couldn't tell, so I have to ask you before I give it full. But we have, again, I almost feel like, does he have wings? Is he supposed to be a gargoyle, or is he just like a boy?
Yeah, he's a gargoyle. He's the shy gargoyle. And he is also repurposed from the FastPass queue. So you can see this is what he used to look like.
Oh, he used to exist before. Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, he's one of the ones that they moved from the FastPass queue.
Yeah, so I don't have anything necessarily about why he's shy. Do you have anything about that?
No, I've been trying to look up things about shy gargoyles and came up empty.
You know, I don't know how to tell you this, but Kate's been trying to date a gargoyle, but she's so shy. And she's like, how do you get a gargoyle to open up to you about his feelings?
Me and ChatGPT, my personal therapist.
I'm sorry, Kate, but sometimes you just got to let them grow and transform themselves. They have to want to change, Kate. You can't just lead a shy gargoyle to water, you know?
It's true. Well, there's actually two of them from the FastPass queue. You can see one that's sitting up here on this other side as well. So, yeah, there's two of them from there.
All right. Shrouded dude with the bird bath to the right. Are we thinking that's death? Are we not? What are we thinking? Is it a mourning shroud? What are we thinking?
So the shrouded figure alludes to haunted sculptures in history, I think is what it is. So there is one that was called Black Aggie that was from 1926 that kind of looked like this, like a shrouded figure, right? The urban legend was someone spending a night in its lap would be haunted by the ghosts of those buried there. The spirits of individuals buried at Druid Ridge would annually convene at the statue, and that no grass would grow in the ground where the statue's shadow would lie during the daytime, or that the statue would animate itself during night, whether physically moving or by showing its glowing red eyes. So I think it's just kind of alluding to these like creepy shrouded statues in history, is my best guess, unless you have something else. That's all I've got.
I can tell you the only thing that I think about when I think about Shroud is, and obviously this probably disconnects from Disneyland. I have to look back into that cemetery scene. We have the shrouded ghost that's in the crypt, and you can't see its face. It's completely covered, and all it is cloth movement. That's the one that has the hidden Mickey in its left palm as it's holding it up. So the shrouded ghost. And we also hear in the song itself, Grim Grinning Ghosts.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, more foreshadowing for what's to come. I hadn't thought of that. And the urns, I think they're urns that are on either side. This is Colin Campbell's art from 1968. And you can see that urns are sitting high up on a brick wall. And so I think that they were just tying back in. Those are urns on a brick wall. And they even have birds on them, which this one has a raven on it. So, I mean...
That would make sense.
Yeah. So
that's actually like one of the better tie-ins.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're even shaped similarly.
Well, and this picture that I have here, that's from the construction wall while they were doing this project. So to me, you know then the Imagineers were looking at this as they were working on this project.
Yeah,
so
I think that's a fairly
legit.
Guess, yes.
There's a couple other things back on the oven crypts, if you don't mind us going back there.
Oven crypts.
We have to talk about lions a little bit because lions are a significant part of this. There's two giant sleeping lions that are in front of the crypt here. So I did some research on lions. There's also a lion door knocker sculpture that is on the corbel up here. If you see, he looks like that. Yeah, exactly. So the lions on either side of the mausoleum. So lions positioned near a crypt typically symbolize power, protection, and the resurrection of the deceased, often drawing from the biblical association of the lion as the Lion of Judah, representing Jesus Christ's power and authority, especially in the context of overcoming death during resurrection. So again, transformation, in case you're participating in Kirk's game. The lions in history for the Haunted Mansion, we have the Lion Tamer by Mark Davis, that there is a lion there, but I really think the symbolism and the transformation. We do see a lion earlier in the queue as well that's just like chilling on the wall. So there's a lion face that's there as well. It seems to be, to me, if I had to say, yes, there is this concept by Mark Davis of a lion tamer, which I think is not insignificant. But to me, I think that the lions tie into not only that transformation, but also if you're in the corridor of doors, there are lion faces that exist there as well. So if you're in the corridor of doors and you see these ones that have the little round circles down there, those are actually lion faces as well, that you can see. This is what it looks like up close. So I think the lions are also just foreshadowing for the faces that you're going to see inside the mansion. Yeah. And the lions show up other places too in New Orleans Square. If you're I've always thought this was really weird and I couldn't figure out what it was for. But if you're in that underpass for Pirates of the Caribbean and you're walking underneath that bridge, on the right-hand side, there is a face of a lion that's like right there. Like it kind of looks like these ones. So it's also kind of used as a decoration around New Orleans Square as well.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense with strength, guardians, dominance, protection, especially over the deceased in that specific case, while they're making their transformation. Drake. I did that one just for y'all. Yeah.
But, it's interesting, though, that thing, like I had said before, gosh, you know what, Kirk? This is so interesting. So remember how I said at a certain point the guy's eyes were closed?
Yeah.
Okay, well, the lion's eyes are closed here, right? Those shy gargoyles are hiding their eyes, and the shrouded figure is covering their eyes.
Okay, but hang on. The only thing that ruins your whole mood is, I don't know, maybe this dude.
He does have eyes open, but everything else is like significant.
I know, but if he was there, he's the Zapruder film, He's back to the left.
Fair. But there are more sculptures that are like starting to cover and close their eyes as we move through the queue.
There's another lion at the tippy top and also has his eyes open.
Okay, well, fine. There goes that theory.
And I looked at the birds on the urns, and they all had their eyes open, and they put their middle feathers up.
Maybe I was gonna say maybe it's something that's human that's doing it, but the lions aren't human. So
the lions aren't human. Yeah, they do have courage.
Now we've come to an interesting part of our story because we have now reached something that does have its eyes open. That is this gargoyle cat lizard demon thing that's crawling up the post.
I'm into it. But I'm into weird stuff, so don't ask me.
First of all, if you would like this for yourself, you can get the Toscano catgoyle on the loose statue for $113.90 at Walmart.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that the Waltons were a big fan of catgoyles.
On the loose with an exclamation point. But again, the metamorphosis of the the one-eyed cat, okay? Because if you remember, the concept is that he kind of turns into a demon as he has his transformation throughout his story, right? He turns into a demon. And that's what we have here is the cat has gone from the beginning of the queue as a normal cat. Then he becomes more alert. He's sitting up. And now he's turned into a demon cat at the end of the queue, which I think is significant. I think that's what's going on with these cats, if I had to guess.
Oh my God. You really think that that's the reason?
Oh, yeah. 100%. Why else is there a demon cat there that looks like a lizard?
Because it fits. Because it's a long pillar, and they were like, cat, gothic. Cat,
no, there's
gargoyle.
no reason to put something on that pillar unless you're like, they specifically said they referenced the one-eyed cat in this queue. And so I think he moves from being kind of, and that's why we have the sign that says, beware of the cat. Attenti al gatto, I think is what it says at the beginning. Because it's going to turn into this demon by the end of the queue.
Okay.
Just saying, because it was on sale at Walmart.
Okay, yeah, I was going to say they found him in the clearance section. Nobody wanted that thing.
I think it's because they transformed him, because the whole message is transformation in the entire queue. And so they made it from the beginning of the queue. The very first thing you see is this normal cat to turn into this demon catgoyle by the end of the queue. Just saying. I think that's what it's about.
I think that's fair. That's fair. I give it to you.
I'm not going to say it's like the best thing that's most obvious that even people are ever going to figure it out without me telling them. But I think that's what they were going for, if I had to guess.
If only this catgoyle had one eye and it was closed.
Yeah.
Then you could really
They should fix that. But again, Disneyland is all about the subtle. Right?
They should fix the eyes.
Subtle. It's subtle.
They should fix the eyes.
I agree. They should fix the eyes.
They should fix the eyes.
I'm with it. I'm with you there. I will say that the up above this area is another graveyard, which has been there for a while. Unfortunately, it's not been open yet with the rest of the queue. There's still a whole bunch of covering over it. But do you want to talk about what's in front of that?
So what kind of creature is this guy? Because he's like a gargoyle too, but he kind of looks like, is that a dog? Is that a bear, bat, dog? He's cool.
You know what he reminds me of he reminds me of these ones, the bat stanchions. Doesn't he kind of look like him?
I think like structurally, but his head reminds me of Five Nights at Freddy's.
A little bit. It's true.
Like he looks more bear-like because of his ears, but he's probably a dog.
Yeah. I think it's probably foreshadowing for the bat stanchions, though, if I had to guess for anything.
Yeah. I mean, they look cool. They look awesome.
They do. That's one of the better gargoyles in the queue.
And this matches, to me, more the aesthetic inside the mansion than anything else that we've seen that were additions. Everything else kind of feels out of place and more mystic and more Victorian and not like creepy crawly spooky.
Yeah. Yeah.
This definitely fits that.
I agree. Well, and so we can't really go over the graveyard, unfortunately, because it's still covered. And so we can't see a lot of them. So that might have to be, honestly, I think we should at some point do a one-off episode of just like the graveyard tombstones and kind of go over more of them because they've added some since we've done the last episode.
And if we do that, we can then, I think, we could vamp on some Pet Cemetery because I know we didn't do that in this episode. And if you're wishing that we would, we're not. But we will in the future.
But we have done the Pet Cemetery in the past in our Disneyland Haunted Mansion episode. So I will say, though, that I watched a lot of queue walkthroughs as I was doing this, which I always appreciate the creators that just do the POVs because it does help us as historians to have a record of what it looked like at that particular date and time. So I think it's great. There was, though, somebody, and I'm not going to say who because I don't want to be mean to them, but there was a pretty large Disney creator who was walking through this and giving some history commentary that wasn't entirely accurate. And they said that there was no, look, they added this Master Gracie, tombstone, which they had at Walt Disney World, and now they've added it here as part of this queue expansion. And that is not true because I can tell you this is a photo from the 1960s where you can see Master Gracie laid to rest, existed there pretty much since the beginning. The one that's specifically referring to Yale Gracie is not new. So just FYI. But
So if you're listening to that person, know that Kate's smarter than him.
it's not what I meant. I just want there to be
That's what I
correct
meant.
information out there.
I want people to be accurate. Listen to Kate for accuracy.
Just want to say it. The other thing before we kind of leave this queue is something that they did change, which was they used to have this little phone box that had it actually hid like a cast member phone in it.
Oh, that's so fun.
Yeah, and actually have a picture of it open because somebody left it open and the cast member closed it while I was watching, which was like the best thing ever. So you can see that's what it looked like. So this little birdhouse phone now no longer exists. They took it out as part of this queue expansion. So now this is it. This is where it used to be, and it's not there anymore. So rest
Probably
in peace.
because they have they probably use that to do like ADA conversations with the stretching room to let people know communication wise. But now because they have a secondary elevator, they don't need to do that.
Yep, I think that's
I bet if we
probably
were
why.
really nice, they would let us go through that.
Well, you can also, I think you can go through there as the chicken exit too. I think that's the chicken exit. If you're like, I want to exit, I want to get out.
I bet if we just asked, they would let us do it.
Probably.
Like, I don't ask enough for this stuff. That's something to ask. Be like, listen, we're such geeks for this. Like, I don't even care about the ride. Like, I just want to see that hallway.
I really thought about like not actually going on the ride by the time I got to the end of this because I was like Haunted Mansion holidayed out. So,
Yeah, I can see that.
but I did. I did go on the ride. But that's all I have for the queue unless you have anything else.
No, I
But
got nothing.
what are your overall thoughts here, Kirk, about what they did here with the queue?
Can I be honest?
Sure, please.
I don't want to be. I think that it's totally I'm not knocking the queue. I think the ADA stuff, yes. The extended queue, yes. Retheming, sure. Enhancements, sure. Transformative, sure. Loose storytelling, sure. I don't mind that they used off the shelf things. What I would have liked to have seen is continuity with the original stories. So if we are going to put cats, we make them one-eyed cats. If we are going to do incantations under the Madame Leota tree, we get a rat in there. If we're supposed to be seeing things go from awake and alert to final resting, that there's continuity with all the eyes being closed towards the end. Like, I just want to see some sort of thematic that encompasses everything. I would have liked to have seen them flesh out more because I think the most entertaining and interesting pieces tend to be the ones that are thematic towards the sea, the lighthouse, the safe. All the Gore and Priscilla storyline is so fantastic. I love seeing the ravens, love seeing gargoyles, love seeing the cat. I like seeing the captains, that book about naval battles and how to be successful and a pirate. Why is there not a chest instead of the safe? Like, there's just like certain things that I would.
Why is it in a garden?
There is. I get like, it's just not enough. Not enough of in-your-face storytelling. I don't think without us going through this, or without Imagineering, or without Disney parks, or without other historians and people writing books about this, I don't think the average guest is going to look at any of this stuff besides go, oh, that's interesting, or that's weird, or, oh, that's cool. I don't even know how many people would put together that it's like Pan is creating panic within the animals through an incantation to Leota. Like, how many
Nobody.
people make that connection?
Literally nobody.
Right? Like, I think Haunted Mansion buffs will get the lighthouse and go Captain Gore. I think that's obvious enough. I think they'll pick up the cat. I don't know if they pick up any of the other mysticism. You know, they'll pick up a raven, but they won't understand the context of foxes or
the conservatory tie-in or the transformation theme that's everywhere. Like, I had to dig for that. Like, I had to really like think about it for a while.
And again, like, we need confirmation from people who design this that our theories are even accurate, because they could have had a completely different context that would allow us to interpret these things in the proper way. I would love to know the story. I just want to know, like, if somebody walked us through and just pointed at everything and how it builds onto entering into the mansion, that would be ideal.
Right. I mean, this is all, full disclaimer, this is our best educated guess on, since we know the history of the mansion, we're very well versed in all of its story, folklore, backlore, rumors, everything that's in the mansion. We have studied a lot of it, not all of it, but a lot of it. So this is our best guess based on what we know and what we're seeing. And I wish that we had more answers to things, but part of it, you know, I think they added so many little things truly because they know people study the mansion and they know they're going to want to try to figure them out. I wish we still had the era of Imagineering where they would design things specifically for it rather than purchasing a lot off the shelf. Maybe some things you purchase off the shelf, but some things you do create specifically for it. I feel like we've lost a lot of that. And I don't know if it's because of budget or because it was rushed or because they just don't have anybody to do it. I don't know, but I am a little bit bummed that we don't have that. That being said, I think there is more storytelling here than most people see because everybody's kind of writing it off as this, like, you know, Home Depot makeover random.
Is that how people, like, how are people feeling about it? And just, is that the vibe? Is like,
that's what people are leaving in my comment section is like, this is a Home Depot tchotchke mess. And I'm like, well, I can see where they get that from, but I also see the storytelling that is very intentional that you have to look closer for. And so people are mad that you have to look closer. And I'm like, but that is also how Disneyland's always been. It's always supposed to be subtle there. It's not supposed to be in your face.
Again, I think the way you solve using it's like when you make a recipe, right? Or let's say you bought like a box cake, but then you spruce it up with your own spice to make it better. You know, like, it's okay to have help. And because making a mold, making a resin, sculpting, like doing a sculpt, I understand all the artistry and time and attention, and they had to churn this. I get all of that. But it's also not challenging to take something that's already built and modify it minorly, like less than 5%, to make it fit the context of the storylines that we already know. And people would freak out about one-eyed cats. I know that seems so minuscule and dumb, but it's not dumb. It's important because people like those elements. It's like the Raven, right? Like, why do you think the Raven has a shoulder plush and is in tons of like pins and merch? Like, it's a part of the story and context. Like, people want to see those things because they're icons that they know and love. And remember, like, we have to have things that are for our our waders, our swimmers, and our divers. But I feel like too much of this is diving and there's very little wading.
Well, yeah, people are just like, I guess between the music and the things that just look a little creepy, I think the waders are supposed to be getting just like kind of creepy, spooky vibes, period. But I don't know if they fully get that because it's like, it's a little bit more like you said, like your crazy aunt who collects things and puts them in her yard. It feels a little bit more silly than creepy.
It's because all of the pieces don't feel like they match.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because it's like one part Gothic, one part Victorian, one part ancient Greek or Roman. You know, like, there's all of these different eras that are being compressed, and it doesn't feel like they're tied. They all feel like they're just this standalone, and because they're a standalone, it doesn't fit. So your eye just is like, well, you got a fox mosaic, you have this spatial and a column, you've got the orbs, an owl. Like, what are we doing here? It's like too disconnected. It's not one cohesive scene. It feels like more of a patchwork quilt that doesn't seem really held together with strong thread.
Well, that's exactly what, if we go back and we hear from John Hench, and he talked about the visual continuity, how there was nothing in Disneyland that contradicted each other. And that was part of what made you feel safe. Because he used the example of if you were in a major city, there's like visual contradictions everywhere around you. Like there's a gas station in front of gas station sign in front of like an old Gothic church, and like nothing makes sense. And so you feel really unsettled in yourself. This was his kind of theory. You felt unsettled because there was no continuity. Nothing spoke to each other. But that was the beauty of Disneyland, was that everything went together. Everything made sense. And I think that is what we're lacking in this queue. Is you're right. I think if they had picked a specific period of time and said everything has to be very close to this, even like within, 50, 60 years of like this period of time, it would have felt so much more cohesive, even if it still had random lawn ornaments.
Yeah, and think about the mansion, right? The mansion doesn't feel like a hodgepodge when you're inside. Even though there's multiple scenes, it all feels cohesive.
Yeah.
So that disconnect that happens outside, and remember, if the mansion is actually supposed to be more inviting, and even though it's looming and kind of spooky, but it's not decrepit, it's not deteriorating, it's not spiritual in an essence of like you can see ghosts everywhere, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's just a house that feels abandoned. But why do all the objects out here make no sense when they're all so polished and poised inside?
Yeah. There's definitely a disconnect between inside and outside, and there's a disconnect between the items and each other, all the different items together. And I think there's sections that make sense together. Like the area with the oven crypt seems pretty cohesive overall. But like the area around the tree is like chaotic. So it depends on where you're at.
All of those figures all look like they're from widely different manufacturers, time periods. Even like the finishes on them, it's like all just so different.
Yeah,
I mean, the one spot I actually really like is I like the table with the pewter mug and the book
and the
right. I think that has a good feel to it. Like that all kind of works.
Yeah, if they had leaned into that more for the rest of the queue, I think that it would have come off well. And for just me personally, one thing that I really wish we had gotten is the well. I really wish we had gotten a well. I mean, for the mansionites that have studied this for years, having that wishing well that he would have thrown Priscilla into, if we're going to talk about Captain Gore at all and mention him, why do we not have a wishing well? I know we have a fountain with her face kind of spewing water, but we don't have, just give us a well, maybe have a red light that turns on at night that makes it look red in the water. Like we would have geeked out about that. And then maybe secretly somewhere really, really small is the little inscription that's scribbled on the wall about Priscilla in the well. Like how amazing would that have been to get into this queue? And we didn't get that.
For those that are listening, that's me agreeing emphatically using hand motions because Kate really nailed it. There's nothing more to be said. That's absolute perfection. That should have happened.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think honestly, if I had to say what probably happened, is combination of budget, combination of timeline of trying to get it done quickly. And also, I think that maybe they're lacking people who really have good mansion knowledge that they didn't lean into.
Don't say that. Stop.
But I don't know. I don't know for sure. But like anybody who really knew the mansion well would have been like, here's what we need to put in this queue, to make these people happy. So I don't know. I'm not being super critical of the Imagineers that did. Obviously, I really enjoy a lot of the things that are in this queue, but I just have a lot of questions about why we did the direction we went in, That's all.
And I don't think this could end right here. I think they could close it for like 3 weeks and solve a lot of these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Even by taking a few elements out, changing a few, and then adding a few, and then we're probably there. With probably under a $5,000 to $10,000 budget.
Yeah. I have a question in my chat. Are we okay with the queue or a tad disappointed? And I think it's a little both. place.
Yeah.
Truthfully.
I think there's elements that we're really think is pretty nice, but they just everything feels like it's unfinished. And I don't mean unfinished like these aren't completed sculptures and they feel like that they're not whole. It's just they were brought so close, but we didn't make it over the goal line.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, we didn't fully finish. And then there's just stuff that makes no sense. So like the you pull the make no sense stuff out, you return to Walmart, and then we get more things.
To Walmart. Although the Walmart demon cat really has grown on me since I kind of like figured out that cat thing, which honestly, I don't even know if that's true, if they meant that, but it seems like it makes sense based on a lot of things. So I don't know.
Yeah, but you can't call it anything besides a catgoyle moving.
Catgoyle.
Yeah, they call it catgoyle.
It's true. It's a catgoyle. Well, I think then that pretty much wraps up this particular episode and this mini series here on the Haunted Mansion queue in Disneyland. It's been really fun to revisit the mansion and go back over some of these stories. Kirk, do you have any final thoughts here as we wrap up?
Gouge that cat's second eye out, please.
And I just want them, I would be happy if they just added a red light to the water in that fountain with the woman spewing water. That would make me happy, to be honest.
Simple thing.
Very simple.
Listen, we could go to Walmart right now.
Let's go. Get a catgoyle while you're there. $113. You're all set. All right. Well, thank you everybody for joining us for this episode of Distory. Thank you for joining us for this year for Distory. This is our final Distory episode of 2024.
We're quitting. This is over. It's all over. We're not quitting.
Yeah, no, we're not quitting. We'll be back in 2025 with a brand new season and definitely lots of new stories to tell.
MG.
I think it's our fourth season. Season 4.
Season 4.
So we'll be back with lots of new stories to tell, digging into deep cuts from Disney history. And we just want to thank you.
We're lucky, yeah. The network, they gave us another option.
They renewed our contract.
Yeah, we're good. We keep going.
Well, thank you everybody so much for listening, for watching, for being with us on this Distory journey. This has been such a fun time with you guys, especially all the information and questions and stuff you also throw our way that really enhances our this podcast and makes it what it is. We really couldn't do this without all of you. So thank you for listening and being along with us for Distory, and happy 2024. Happy holidays, everybody. And we will see you next year for another season of Distory.
Oh my gosh. So crazy. I love it. You guys are the best. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in the new year.
We'll see you. No more saying transformation.
Drink.
Bye, everybody.
See you guys.